The buried key. Daniel Harper wasn't planning to stumble into a mystery when he bought the old Victorian house on the edge of town. He just needed a fresh start after a messy divorce. He was desperate for a change, and the dilapidated property seemed like the perfect project. The house had been sitting on the market for years, needing far more than just a coat of paint, but it was cheap, and Daniel figured he had nothing to lose. For the first few weeks, he focused on basic repairs, fixing the leaky pipes, replacing broken windows, and sanding down the warped floorboards. One afternoon, while tearing out the moldy kitchen cabinets, he noticed something strange. Behind the crumbling section of the wall, there was a small, metal box wedged between the wooden studs. It looked old, rusted shut, but after a few tries, Daniel managed to pry it open with a screwdriver. Inside, nestled in the dust, was a small, ornate key. Daniel turned it over in his hand, admiring the intricate design carved into the bowl of the key. It was delicate, almost like it belonged to an antique jewelry box or an old diary. A flicker of excitement ran through him, a feeling he hadn't had in years. This was more than just a piece of the house's past. Maybe it was a good omen, a sign that this place had more in store for him than just another failed project. Curious, Daniel decided to ask around town. That evening, he ended up at Miller's Tavern, a dimly lit bar filled with regulars who'd lived in the area for decades. If anyone knew the history of the house, it would be them. Daniel walked up to the counter, holding the key between his fingers. "Hey, Sam," he called out to the bartender, an older man with a thick, graying beard and a weathered face. Sam had been running the bar for as long as anyone could remember and had a knack for remembering even the smallest bits of local gossip. "What's up, Daniel?" Sam asked, wiping a glass with a faded rag. "I found this key in the wall of my place today," Daniel said, holding it up. "Ever seen anything like it?" Sam squinted at the key, then slowly shook his head. "Can't say I have, but that old place of yours, it's got a bit of a history." "What kind of history?" Daniel asked, leaning in, intrigued. Sam set the glass down, a distant look clouding his eyes. "The Mason family used to live there. Big house, big family. There was a fire back in the 70s, I think. It was a real tragedy. After that, the place sat empty for years. No one's talked much about it since." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. He hadn't heard anything about a fire when he bought the house. "A fire? Did anyone?" Sam gave a slight nod. "They say the youngest daughter didn't make it out. After that, the Masons packed up and left town. Never came back." Daniel frowned, glancing at the key in his hand. It suddenly felt colder, heavier. "Any idea what this key might be for?" Sam hesitated, then shook his head again. "No clue. But if I were you, I'd ask Walter Green. He's the oldest guy in town, and he used to be a volunteer firefighter back in the day. If anyone remembers what happened, it's him." Daniel thanked Sam and left the bar, the key tucked into his pocket. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what kind of secrets were buried in the walls of his new home. The next morning, Daniel made his way to the address Sam had given him. Walter Green's house was a small, withered cottage on the outskirts of town. The yard was overgrown, but the place had a lived-in feel. Daniel knocked on the door, and after a few moments, it creaked open. Walter was a frail man in his 90s, with thin, white hair and sharp, piercing eyes that seemed far too alert for his age. "You must be the fella who bought the old Mason place," Walter said, eyeing Daniel up and down. "What brings you here?" "I found something in the house," Daniel said, holding up the key. "Sam at the bar said you might know what it's for." Walter's expression darkened the moment he saw the key. He stepped back, motioning for Daniel to come inside. "Close the door behind you," he said quietly. Inside, the house was cluttered with old books and faded photographs. Walter shuffled over to an armchair and slowly sat down, gesturing for Daniel to do the same. "That key," Walter began, his voice low, "it belonged to Emily Mason the youngest daughter." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. "The one who died in the fire?" Walter nodded slowly. "The fire wasn't an accident," he said, his eyes locking onto Daniel's. "There were rumors about the Masons, about things they were into. Dark things. Emily was different, though. She wasn't like the rest of them. They say she had a diary, kept hidden away. She wrote down everything." Daniel felt a shiver crawl up his spine. "And you think this key opens her diary?" Walter leaned back, his face twisted in an expression somewhere between fear and regret. "Not just her diary. They say there was a hidden room in that house, a place where the Masons did their rituals. Whatever's locked up in there, it's something they didn't want anyone to find." Daniel's mind raced. He thought of the strange noises he'd heard at night, the cold drafts that seemed to come from nowhere. "Do you know where this room is?" Walter shook his head. "If I did, I I wouldn't be here talking to you. But be careful, son. Some things are better left buried. Daniel left Walter's house with more questions than answers, the key feeling like a lead weight in his pocket. As he drove back to the Victorian house, he felt a growing sense of dread. He realized he was standing at the edge of something far bigger than just a renovation project. The past wasn't as dead as it seemed, and whatever was hidden behind that locked door was waiting for him to find it. He parked the car and stepped inside, the air in the house feeling colder than usual. Taking a deep breath, he headed straight for the basement. If there was a hidden room, it had to be down there. He just hoped that whatever he found wouldn't be something he'd regret unlocking.